Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at one of the most long suspected, long anticipated premiums in the game. This is Tier VIII Premium Italian aircraft carrier, Aquila. Aquila is absolutely a historical ship. For those of you who don't know, the Regia Marina was absolutely developing an aircraft carrier of their own. I do not have the timelines in front of me, so I'm not going to pretend to fake it. I'm going to let smarter people than me come into the comments and tell you guys all about it. Because anything I say in the video, they're going to nitpick and tell me I'm wrong anyway, so it's kind of pointless. But I know that this ship did exist. I don't believe she ever was like Graf Zeppelin. I don't know that she ever left port, right? In the sense of, I think the hull was built, they were in the middle of outfitting, and then somewhere along the way the war broke out, and I don't know that she ever even like finished sea trials or launched airplanes or whatever. But the Italians were absolutely working on this technology. So this is a ship that, one of the nice things about World of Warships is we end up with ships in the game that are, well, hypotheticals. Aquila here is a little more than hypothetical. She actually was laid down, launched, and built, but never fully operational, but she will be here in World of Warships. So let's have a look. Now, Tier 8 is a very, very busy and honestly very competitive place for aircraft carriers. Tier 8 has more carrier variety than any other tier in the game. And each Tier 8 carrier has something that it kind of does really well, like usually better than everybody else's. So we're gonna have to dig a little deep here, I think, to find what that's gonna be for Aquila. But let's look around the ship. First things first, survivability 51,100 hit points is fairly middle of the road. Fairly middle of the road, right? Lexington runs away with this category. She's got 57,000 and change, but again, you have to remember that Lexington was built on basically the remains of a battle cruiser hull. So she's always going to be like the big beefy cousin in the room, right? She's got a lot of HP. But I mean, Kaga has about this amount of health. Shokaku, Indomitable, Chikalov, August Parseval. Like, there's a lot of Tier 8 cruisers with around 50 to 51,000 HP. So you're very competitive. This is not abnormally bad or anything. 13% torpedo protection though is pretty bad. It's very, very bad. Let's be honest. It's not worse than Tier because Saipan exists, right? And Saipan, of course, is built on a heavy cruiser hull, so she's not going to have great torpedo protection. I'm a little surprised at this number, if I'm honest, right? 13% torpedo protection for an Italian hull feels really bad. The Italians, of course, had a very, very good anti-torpedo protection system that went into most of their battleships, and it feels like here on Aquila, it is either not present or forgotten. And again, somebody smarter than I am is going to be able to come into the comments and tell you all about that. Quick look over the armor scheme, even though you probably won't be getting a whole lot of use out of her armor because it is an aircraft carrier. The most important thing is, does she have any kind of armored deck? And as you can see here, with 25 millimeters throughout the flight deck, the answer is no. She has no armor to speak of on the deck whatsoever. Let's have a look at her belt armor. Let's take off the torpedo bulge. Does she have anything? No. No, I have 19 millimeter extremities, 19 millimeters quote unquote armor belt, 19 millimeters on the Citadel wall there. I mean, yeah, this is yikes. I've got the torpedo bulge, which is 19 mils, and then a little bit of spacing, and then yeah, and there's my Citadel even. What is this? This Citadel shape is strange. Look at that. That is a weird shape. Now she's got a little bit of spaced armor going on in here, right? So if you're taking shots at this thing at long range and you're plunging fire down through her deck, don't be shocked if you get a few that get caught in this space and rattle around a bit and don't accomplish a whole lot. But yeah, this Citadel is very odd. 80 millimeters up here, 19 millimeters back here. And you know what? There's even a layer in here. You see, like, there's this line through here. It makes me wonder if this 80 millimeter plate extends all the way through the center of the ship. I bet it does. I bet it does. Which would mean you've got to get through the 25 millimeter flight deck. If you're bombing her, let's say 25 millimeter flight deck, 19 millimeter here, Citadel, and then maybe there's another Citadel plate in here. I don't know. That's a very odd armor scheme. Bottom line is, of all the Tier 8 carriers, Aquila has a pretty unimpressive armor scheme. Like this for something this size, this looks like a cruiser armor scheme. If not even that good, really. So, pro tip, guys, if you're driving your Aquila, don't get shot at. That's a really good piece of advice. Maneuverability, 31.5 knots, 950 on the turning circle, 12.9 on the rudder shift. 31.5 knots is not worst in tier. Kaga still has that. She's got the lock on that at 28. And Aquila here is a little faster than that, of course, like we said, coming in at 31.5. So that's not terrible. Actually, you know what? Oh, you know what? That's wrong. I've got the speed flag. Her base speed is 30 knots. I was looking at that thinking that looked wrong. Yeah, so her base speed is 30 knots. So again, not quite worse than tier, but only just a step above it. So she's not all that fast to go along with her kind of lack of torpedo protection. 950 on the turning circle is actually quite good. This is cruiser handling, guys. This is, I mean, consider Saipan has a 920 turning circle, and Implacable and Aquila have a 950 turning circle. This is not bad, right? So, but you're still an aircraft carrier. This is still huge. You're not going to handle all that well. 12.9 on the rudder shift is, it's not to get excited about. You can see for yourself how slow it is. And compared to her contemporaries, it's pretty average. Nothing to get too excited about. Now, one of the questions that I have as I look at the ship is she stealthy, right? If I'm a little slow and a little fat and not very well armored, am I at least somewhat stealthy? You see there with her permanent camo on, Aquila gets down to a 13.4 detection on the surface. Full stealth rig for this ship is 10.9 detection on the surface. Is that best in tier? No, because again, Saipan still exists, and so do the Japanese. But it is pretty good, right? It's pretty good. There's a few ships ahead of her. Parseval, Chkalov, and Pobeda all get just slightly better detection, as does Indomitable. But she's not on the high end of things like Graf Zeppelin and Lexington and Enterprise. So not bad, really, not bad. The question is, do you try and build this ship full stealth? Because in order to do that, you have to take Kid Menace, which is like broken as all get out. So you probably don't want to be doing that. But again, stealth is average, not amazing. All right, let's talk about Aquila's aircraft, because, I mean, it's an aircraft carrier. That's why you're here. Aquila comes with two different types of squadrons, both based off the same type of aircraft. She has attack planes back here that fire AP rockets, and then up forward, the exact same type of plane that will drop torpedoes. Let's look at the attack aircraft first. You see there, I have 24 planes on the deck, 10 aircraft in a squadron in attack waves of 5, each plane dropping 12 AP rockets. So a full volley of AP rockets is 60 rockets at 1,150 potential possible damage, maximum damage apiece. That's if they citadel something. So the alpha strike on that is over 70,000. Now, of course, you're not going to possibly land all, 60 rockets as citadels. That would be lunacy, and nothing would survive that. And the dispersion pattern, I'm sure, doesn't allow for it. Wargaming's not on crack. But it does mean that her rocket alpha is very, very, very strong. And something else I want to point out, look at a couple other things here. 24 planes on deck, 10 planes in a squadron. So that means that you automatically start with 2 full waves of planes on your deck ready to go at the start of a match. Then, only 58 seconds to regenerate a plane. And of course, that's before any buffs or any skills lowers that. That means that even without any buffs over the course of a match, she can put up a maximum of 44 of these planes, right? Because you're basically getting back 1 a minute. She starts with 24. A 20-minute match means 44 planes max. That is, I mean, when you kind of marry that to this rocket, that's really nasty. This thing feels to me a little bit like Parseval on crack, right? Like when you're a cruiser and there's a German, well, if they really, I don't want to talk about Zeppelin. Zeppelin doesn't have this problem, but if there is a Parseval on either team, chances are you're very cognizant of his rocket planes. You don't want him catching you in the broadside. You're going to try and maneuver to show him an angle to the rockets. Aquila, you're going to have to treat the same way. These rockets will absolutely mess up any cruiser she comes across, and possibly the odd the odd battleship or two. These rockets have, I looked it up, I got Wargaming to confirm for me, 122 millimeters of penetration maximum on the rockets. So that means that you're not going to be penning belt armor on a battleship, but you might be able to pen some of the casemate armor, the upper works, certainly the superstructure. And again, some of that is going to depend on the angle of attack. Without playing the ship, it's hard for me to say kind of what angle these planes come in at. Bottom line is that angle will matter because these are armor-piercing rockets, right? So you might actually ricochet with some of them if you come in too steeply. So anyways, lots to process, but if you're used to playing the German carriers and their AP rockets, Aquila's rockets, I believe, are going to function very similarly. I haven't seen the targeting reticle, so I'm not sure, but it feels that way. Couple other things I want to point out while we're sitting here looking at these, kind of, again, links, nods back towards the Germans. Look at that plane health. Only 1,000 HP per plane. Only 1,000. That is crazy. This is like tier 4 American plane health, right? I mean, yikes. You know, you think about the Germans, like again, I'll look at Parseval, her planes are not that healthy. This is even weaker than that. But where you make up for it is speed, right? 169 knots is not the fastest thing at tier 8 because Indomitable exists, but it blows away just about everyone else. Even Enterprise's rocket planes at 160 knots are slower than this. So there's a lot to like. Like you'll be able to cycle these planes very, very quickly. Have a quick look at her torpedo bombers. This is something else. Again, it's the same plane, so you're looking at the same speed, right? The max speed is a little lower, presumably because of the heavier payload, right? Those torpedoes are going to have a much heavier weight to them than a bunch of rockets. So you have a slightly lower maximum speed. You're still looking at a very, very low amount of health. 26 planes on deck, 8 aircraft in a squadron. They attack in waves of 2. What does that mean? It means I start the game with three full squadrons on my deck, ready to go, and I can attack 4 times, potentially 4 times, with each wave of these planes. Now, the plane regen, you see there's 68 seconds. That's pretty good for torpedo bombers at tier 8. If memory serves, that's actually a bit above average. I'm going to have a peek here. 68 seconds is, well, it's not best in tier. It's not best in tier because Hornet has been released and Enterprise exists, but it's certainly on the high end, right? It's probably in the top 3 for torpedo plane regen. Here's the other thing to point out about these torpedoes. Look at that alpha damage. 8,400. These are the heaviest, hardest hitting torpedoes in tier 8. Even Shokaku's and Kaga's torpedoes don't come close to this. Now, you're only putting 2 into the water. So what does that mean? It means your alpha strike is somewhat limited because you only can land the 2. But to go along with that big alpha hit, these torpedoes have the highest flood chance of any aerial drop torpedoes in tier 8. 71%. So they duck ahead of the Brits. The Brits used to have this crown. Implacable. Implacable's torpedoes had a 63% flood chance. Aquila's here have a 71% flood chance. So these torpedoes are very much meant to try and, drop on multiple targets, get a few flood stacks going, and put some flood damage into a big battle wagon on the other team. The trick is that, these planes are quick, but man, they are fragile. They are super fragile. So that's going to be a tough challenge. And you can see that the torpedoes themselves are very slow. Worst in tier speed, basically, right? 30 knots. Nobody else is slower than this. So they hit hard, but they're very, very slow. Using these against a maneuvering battleship at speed, with that kind of speed, might be a bit of a challenge. We're going to have to see. Again, with plane handling and reticle sizes and how quickly there's so many subtle things to how carriers work when you try to compare them that just looking at them in port never tells the whole story, right? I can sit here and talk numbers all day, but until we see the reticle size and how quickly it narrows and so on and so forth, all these different things, it's impossible to really kind of grade and judge the ship compared to so many of her contemporaries that function a little differently. But that's it, guys. AP rockets, torpedoes, nothing else. You have no possibility of setting fires on this carrier. So if you're going to lean on those torpedo bombers, you're really leaning on the floods. Feels like Aquila might be best sort of if you kind of paired her up with, divvied her up with like a Cleveland or somebody else who you could kind of tag team a ship, burn down some of his AA with the Cleveland, chip away, get him to burn his DCP on some fires, then come up with the torpedoes, land some floods, and get some good damage in. Artillery, we'll have a look at the secondaries here. She's got some of these 135mm secondaries along the deck. Out to 6 kilometers. I mean, they have an 11-second reload. If you get run down by a destroyer on the surface and he's got more than 2,000 or 3,000 HP, you're hosed. These aren't going to kill him. They just aren't. They are still HE. They're not SAP, right? So, yeah, it's just what it is. A defense. This is another place that Aquila is going to struggle a little bit. She does not have an outer anti-aircraft bubble. Okay, even some of the Italian ships that have them, they only go out to 4.6, and Aquila here doesn't even have one, so her A bubble doesn't even start until 3.7 kilometers. In that sense, she's going to feel a little bit like Saipan in terms of how snipeable she is. This ship is with her low torpedo protection, okay, and her questionable anti-aircraft defenses is going to be highly vulnerable to opposing torpedo strikes coming through and sniping her off the board because she's going to take a lot of damage from those torpedoes. Her AA is not going to be able to drive off those planes. She's going to be very reliant on her combat air patrol to try and do that. And most torpedo planes will be able to drop from well outside their torpedo range, right? Most of these Tier 8 torpedoes, well, some of them, not all of them, but some of them have 6 kilometers range. I'm looking at you, the Russians and Graf Zeppelin. The Japanese go out to 5. The Americans typically go out to 3.5. So they'll just come into her range when they can drop torpedoes. So if you're sitting stationary, right, like Aquila is not a carrier you can risk sitting stationary at the start of a match. The same way you can't with Saipan, right? As match starts, you got to pick a spot for your hull and get moving. Be moving. Don't leave this thing vulnerable somewhere where she can get dunked on. Let's have a look at the plane consumables real quick, just to make sure that nothing is exciting over there. I don't think there is. No, engine boost, 3 charges of patrol fighters, 5 fighters in a squadron, so that is all standard for Tier 8. And yep, 4 fighters there out of the Combat Air Patrol. That is also standard. She does get the typical heal there for her torpedo bombers, and nothing else exciting going on there. So all the regular consumables, nothing special about Aquila in that regard. We'll have to see how she comes out of testing, guys. The torpedo strikes look really good, and the rocket strikes also look really good. But this is not a ship that's going to harass destroyers, right? This is keeping in line with Wargaming's recent string of carrier releases that are, well, not all that threatening to smaller units, certainly destroyers. Light cruisers a little more so. These AP rockets will absolutely punish any light cruiser or heavy cruiser they can catch broadside. And quite a few battleships may regret that, may regret their positional choices as well if she can get a good rocket strike in. The torpedoes are going to be almost exclusively the purview of using them against big battleships or big slow supercruisers that have chosen to sit stationary up next to an island or something along those lines. And she'll get good work out of those, especially against cruisers that have less torpedo protection than those battleships do. In the meantime, guys, there you go. That's our first look at Tier 8 Premium Italian Cruiser Aquila. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands. Be safe. I'll catch you next time.